As we all know, these are historically anxious times. So in the next two episodes, we're going to be talking about anxiety.
Welcome to the podcast where it's all about living your love story and making your life and world a story where love wins. My name is Siena.
And my name is Toast. We've been partners in life, love, and music since 2001. Welcome to our podcast.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today.
Are you ready to talk about anxiety?
Oh, I don't know. Okay, so let me tell you how this all started. I am on the email list for something called the Blue Zones, which we have talked about a few times on the podcast. And in one of the email newsletters, they had an interview with an author, and she's actually more than an author, but her name is Sarah Wilson, and she was talking a little bit about connection during this time of COVID. But through that, I don't know if you folks do this, I'm sure all of you do this though, is then you start to Google and you start clicking on links and you go down your own little rabbit hole. So grateful for this rabbit hole because then I found out that Sarah Wilson wrote a book about quitting sugar that then led me to another book that she wrote that talked all about anxiety. So I immediately went to Amazon and I bought both. And I'm so grateful because the anxiety book in particular really just blew my mind. It blew my mind. Let me tell you, the book is called First We Make the Beast Beautiful by Sarah Wilson. First, we make the beast beautiful. A new journey through anxiety. And not only, to my delight, is this book a hardcover. I love hardcover books. And this is going to be too much information, but I do have to share with you. The book is very soothing for me because it's a hardcover that doesn't have that awful paper cover around it.
Trivia about Siena is that she hates book jackets.
I love me a hardcover book. Okay, I love a hardcover book. But that awful paper jacket that comes on it,
that pisses you off.
That's the first thing that goes. I rip that sucker off. I cannot handle that thing. No, and I like to feel the actual book as I caress the book we're talking about today. I love it.
And it's textured.
You know, I love it. That jacket is cold. It's just flappy. It's poking you. Like, I can't stand it. Anyways.
I think that's such a random, weird pet peeve, but I love it because it has to do with books. And I don't hate book jackets.
You love it, actually.
I don't love them.
Well, no, you were talking about the bookmark.
Well, I was speaking
bookmark.
I was speaking up for how they provide you double duty as, yes, two bookmarks because they have two flaps on either end. So you can, sometimes I'll use the back flap as a marker for where the book itself actually ends and where, for example, the index begins
or God, we're such
the
geeks.
endnotes begin.
We are such geeks. All right. Okay, on with the topic. So I will say that the reason why this book just blew my mind is that I will personally tell you that I never considered myself to be an anxious type person, a fretter, which Sarah Wilson refers to anxious type people as fretters in a loving way, of course. I never thought of myself as a fretter. I had this idea that everyone experiences anxiety from time to time at different levels throughout their life. But
which is true.
Which is absolutely true. But an anxious person, a person who is more consistently anxious, a fretter, I just never thought I was that. Because in general, I believed certain myths or like stereotypes of fretters to be things like you had to have suffered like a trauma. I mean, I have suffered a trauma. I've shared that in the past, but that was a prerequisite, because then you might have PTSD.
Yeah, I feel like that, conception that you had connected anxiety with the post-traumatic stress
symptoms. Which is true, but not true for all fretters,
right?
Right. And I also thought that, okay, if you're a fretter, you've probably experienced a panic attack or have panic attacks. Mm-hmm. Every now
Or
and
have
then.
a phobia of flying or of
Right.
spiders or something.
Right. And just in general, having a nervous type personality.
Having a fearful type of
yes.
attitude.
And super inward, super inward
Like
kind
awkward.
of person. Inward. Just maybe like shyer than most and,
Okay.
fearful of more things. Like, I just had this idea.
Like of how they
You
carry
know?
themselves in the world is more like smaller and
I mean, yeah, because you're anxious. Because you're more
because you're
consistently
fearful
anxious.
and- okay.
Yeah. Anxious and worried and all of that stuff. So that's naively, that's what I thought.
But I think
I thought that.
a lot of us would think
Did
that.
you think that?
I probably, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, but as I'm reading the book, I'm like, this is me. This is me.
It just explains so much.
It explains so much. And so that's why the book blew my mind and is really helping me to embrace this fretter part of myself and to embrace and also explain why I do certain things and also how to help move through life as a fretter. So it's not just like, okay, let's just get rid of the anxiety. Let's just not be a fretter.
Let's just
not
solve this
be an anxious
problem.
person. Yeah. It's about the gifts that are inherent in being a fretter, which we'll talk about in part 2.
Oh, okay.
But anyways, so even if you think I'm not a fretter, I'd say maybe get the book and see. And if you aren't a fretter, I'm sure you know a fretter because fretters generally hook up or connect with non-fretters to help them anchor and ground the energy, which I would say toast is you are a non-fretter.
It gets tricky though, I think, because sometimes the part of me that does not fret easily kind of catalyzes even more anxiety in you.
That is so true.
Don't you feel? Yeah. So
I know what you're saying.
That has been a difficult thing for us. Because,
and then I think I have to do it all because you're not fretting enough.
Right. And yet I'm still learning, and I'm sure I will be for the rest of our lives. I'm still learning how to find and live in that middle ground. And what I mean is, on one end of the extreme, which I think I tend to go to naturally, is I try to be, grounded and calming and not fretting about it, like addressing it, but staying calm. But I think, that makes you feel even more anxious sometimes because it's like, oh my God, Toast is like not taking this seriously enough, right? Like, we need more involvement. We need more concern. We need more. And, but the other end of how I could react, which I have tried sometimes, I think, but it feels unnatural to me, is to start
fretting,
getting anxious myself, right? Like, it's like, well, I'll try to make you feel better by joining you and showing you that,
the fret.
Hey, you're not alone in your anxiety, or you're not alone. Like, I'm here too. Like, I'm really concerned, and I'm gonna, But
did you think I was a fretter? Like, did you, from being my partner all these years, would you have said, when I came to you and said, "Oh my God, I'm an anxious person," were you like, "Yeah, duh"?
No, I don't think.
Were you like, "Oh, interesting"?
Yeah, it was more that, and it was more like, well, tell me more. Let's talk about this, because I didn't know what definition of anxious person
Exactly.
right you're talking about.
But as you're reading the book, aren't you seeing like, yeah, that's totally, oh my God, yes, that is Siena. Oh my gosh, she does that.
Yes. Well, and I had a preview because as you were reading the book, you would come to and share with me stuff.
God.
And it was great. It was great. And I'm so happy that we're reading it together. Well, I'm reading it
Okay,
after
that
you,
sounds
but you know what I mean.
sounds so codependent. Yeah, we're not like sharing and reading the book together,
No.
right? I've read it. You are now reading it.
To clarify,
Yes, to
we're not
clarify.
sitting together
And
reading the same book.
the same page, and waiting for the other to finish, and then moving on. No, we don't do that here. Okay, so we will say that, and I thought that this was really helpful. That a person who has anxiety, in general, is obsessed or worried or overly concerned about the future. And the important word here is overly concerned about the future. Where depression, and I bring up depression because a lot of times an anxious person will be connected with having depressed episodes. They will go from anxiety to depression, anxiety to depression. Depression is being overly concerned, obsessed with the past. So we're missing the present, right? We're missing the present here. So they say that peace, feeling peaceful, feeling balanced and in a mode of acceptance, so not resigned, but just acceptance of life, that is when you are living in the present.
And would you say that a sense of flexibility is paired with this present peace?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because we can't, I mean, that's what we strive for, right? Living in the present. I don't think it's a constant state that we can really.
Well, that's what's tricky about the present. It's always moving, and yet it's always not.
I mean, I guess
Right?
too, it depends on what you do for a living too, right? Because some things require you to be totally present.
Oh, right. Like air traffic controllers and surgeons.
If you work in the ER. But anyways, I thought that was really helpful to kind of clarify those lanes a bit.
Anxiety, obsessed about the future.
Future.
Depression, obsessed about the past. Okay. Although, okay, I just need to speak up
Go for it. Yep.
for the anxiety about being obsessed with the future. I appreciate how you said the key word is overly concerned about the future, because, of course, we have the part of our brain that can think and plan for the future,
Yeah.
because it's helped the human race survive.
Yes.
So plans are good,
Yep.
and thinking about the future is good. I think it's such a key paradox, I guess, to grasp and to try to come to peace with, the concept that plans are always going to be wrong, but you still need to do them, or it still helps to do them. You don't need to do them, but life will probably suck more if you don't. But
So
they're
positive. Such positive speech.
Rainbows and unicorns. Come to me for your rainbows and unicorns. But just that,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, I think that, very true. I think oftentimes anxiety will show up for a lot of us when we are trying to fall asleep and we can't sleep. So unless you have a hormonal issue where maybe your progesterone's too low, your melatonin's too low, we all should be able to sleep. But a lot of times we can't if we are anxious about
and our mind is
something.
racing.
And that tends to be when you're thinking about the something, you're thinking about the future. It's not a regret. You're not thinking about, because really when you think about times you can't sleep, you're not thinking about the past. You're not going, back then.
Or if you are thinking about the past, you're probably thinking about how you can make up
Fix it.
for things that
right,
happened
like,
in the
okay,
past.
that happened in the past, but you're thinking about, oh no, I have to talk with them tomorrow.
Right, how to
Oh no,
remedy
what am I gonna do about this thing that
Right.
happened yesterday?
Right, how do
What
I
am gonna
redeem
do?
myself? How do I make things better about...
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's so much anxiety right now because we don't know what's happening with COVID and how things are, what will
And the world order
life
and our
look
nation.
like. Yep. the election and everything and
our lives
and all of that, your job, you might be thinking about your job and what's going to happen with your job, the economy, more on that, people's lives. People are continuing to suffer from COVID, deaths. It's on the rise on Oahu, which we both, Toast and I have relatives.
Yeah,
have
and
family
on the Big Island.
On Oahu.
No.
And on the Big Island,
Hilo
but
is a hot
Oahu's
spot.
had triple numbers daily, triple digits every day. So anyways, okay, let's see. Any other thing for anxiety for this part 1?
Well, when you brought up the sleep thing, I just had 2 things come to mind. Mm-hmm. And the first was, I think this was a point made in the book, that one possible reason we have trouble falling asleep is because we haven't taken enough time during our normal waking hours to just
process.
Process and to be alone in a quiet place and just reflect.
Yeah.
And
That's
just sit quietly.
Yeah,
And
that's
have things settle.
That has a lot to do with creating space, which we're going to talk about in part 2
Okay.
of this. But I do want to say that with with my personal revelation of like, oh my God, I'm a fretter.
Mm-hmm.
I think there has been some confusion for me because I have and I do identify as being an empath, which has very similar kinds of traits as maybe a person who is anxious. So I definitely think there's overlap there.
It's definitely related. Yeah.
So maybe you empaths out there will relate to the anxious journey. Yeah.
And the second and final thing about sleeping
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you
is
said 2 things. Sorry.
is that, only since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, when factories became main workplaces, and the idea of shift work and the idea of prioritizing efficiency and working according to hours, like what's your shift, that imposition on typical working person is what created the idea of, okay, then you sleep for 8 hours straight and then you wake up and go to your work and you work for this many hours straight. And that actually is not how human beings
right?
developed as an organism.
Yeah.
Like we developed and evolved to sleep kind of episodically. So the fact that, let's say, maybe you wake up in the middle of the night is normal. Like that doesn't mean that you're bad at sleeping necessarily. They have historical documents from before the Industrial Revolution where people's journals and diaries would typically say, oh, I went to sleep and then, hey, I worked on, one of my projects, whatever, at 3 a.m. for a half an hour or whatever, and then went back to sleep. So,
I kind of love that idea. Like being able to embrace that kind of a schedule of sorts, because I can feel how natural that would be.
Yeah.
It's just, you got to play in this world,
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
When is the meeting? It's at 8 a.m.
Right.
So I got to be up and ready by then. Yeah. All right.
So thanks for joining us. That was On Anxiety, part 1 of 2. Next week, obviously, we're going to do part 2 of 2. And we're going to be talking about the underlying root, foundational, spiritual causes of why the heck we get anxious. And then we'll have really simple, practical tips about engaging with and dealing with anxiety. So please join us for that. Until next week,
this is Siena.
And this is Toast. As always, inviting you to come and live your love story.